Well, hello and welcome. My name is Adrian Hill. I'm the host of The Crux, and today I'm delighted to welcome to the show not only a really close friend, but someone who I look up to for what they've been able to achieve in their corporate career so far. Starting out at one of Australia's largest job boards, Seek, 10 plus years ago. I'm sure you can fix me up on that a little bit later on, Barry. But then transitioning into one of the world's largest online learning providers in the world through Go1, to now launching and helping grow another L&D business, Superpath, which I'm really excited to learn more about as we transition onto the call. But without further ado, Barry, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on board.
Nah, thanks for having me, mate. Great to catch up again. It's been a long time between drinks, so yeah, and always a pleasure, mate. So thanks for having me.
You're welcome. It has been a little bit too long. So obviously you live, you don't live in God's country like I do up here in Queensland, but hopefully one day you can make the move to up here. But yeah, obviously there's lots to cover off today. As I said at the top, really energized and inspired by your journey. There's no shadow of a doubt you're one of the hardest workers that I've ever had the privilege of working with and watching go along the journey. But why don't we just, for those who aren't aware, why don't we just go back to the start and just sort of walk us through your journey over the last sort of 10 years?
Yeah, probably. You know me, I love a story more than anyone. I'll probably go back further than 10 years just to kind of paint a picture. Everyone knows I love a story and I can
You love
talk
to paint a
underwater.
picture.
Absolutely. So as your viewers can probably pick up, I've got a bit of a hybrid accent. I grew up in Zimbabwe. I was going to become a farmer, funny enough. Now I find myself in tech, which has been a huge flip on its head. Been in Australia 20 years now. Went to university up in Queensland, as you call it, God's country. No arguments there, and basically was the first international student at the uni, I think, or one of the first few there. Studied business marketing as part of my entry into Australia. We had to go to uni. I chose marketing because it was probably the easiest degree. Doesn't say much about the work ethic you were talking about before. Got through that. And then as I did work for mum and dad, they have a little engineering business. But being from Zimbabwe, we're pretty old school, my folks are. And they wouldn't let me touch any of the tech machines. I literally swept the floor and put the scrap metal in the bins. And I did that for a good 2 years while I was at uni.
Knowing you for as long as I do now, I wouldn't let you touch most tech either, especially CRMs.
Yeah,
We can touch on that.
And then and then I decided, like everyone back in the day, to take a 1 year gap year, which ended up being 3 years. Lived in the UK for a bit, where I started to cut my teeth in sales, and then moved back to Australia, and made the big move to move down to Sydney to the big smoke, where I thought, you know what, let's give sales a bit of a crack. And an interesting journey. I started at a signage business because that's what mum and dad did, making signs, fabrication. So I thought, well, what better? Let me go sell signage. God, I wish I hadn't done that, but it taught me a thing or two. And then to your point, found myself at Seek, which was probably a career-defining moment. Great company, great leadership, and that's where I sort of got my feet under the desk, if you want to use a cheesy pun. But that's where I started to grind my teeth in terms of what I'm doing, and I'm more passionate about HR, tech, learning and development, organizational development. It's and it's led me to where I am today.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, you've obviously been in the L&D space for a number of years now, obviously starting back at Seek and going through Go1. And now you're at a very exciting company called Superpath as the VP of growth there. Talk us through a little bit more about Superpath and what you're trying to achieve with that organization.
Yeah, I mean, Superpath it's given me a new lease of energy. People talk about that fire in your belly. Don't get me wrong, I've enjoyed my roles coming through. I've learned a lot. Often guilty of working a bit too hard. That laptop sits on my lap. Now I know why it's called a laptop. It's one of those funny things, and really passionate about the L&D space. My last sort of previous role with Go1 kind of started the idea of me wanting to build my own business. And the opportunity came along with Superpath. We are a learning management system, which is a term I don't really like using. It's more of a learning experience platform. And I'm probably going to get killed by our founder and CEO for saying this, but hope he's not listening. But we liken ourselves to, if you think of platforms, and I love a good analogy when I'm doing my storytelling. But if you want to think of what we do and how we do it differently, we're kind of Canva on the front end and Workday in the back end.
Awesome.
So really, really intuitive, really easy to use, and then really powerful. So think of an enterprise grade piece of software. It's got all the bells and whistles, but really clean and easy to use on the front, like Canva. So if you haven't designed a birthday card before or a pitch deck, as we all know, you can jump in and do that with ease. Great company. Those happen to be Australian, so cherry from them from the sidelines. Yeah,
that's fantastic. No, I'm super excited to see the growth of what you guys are going to be able to achieve at Superpath. I think I genuinely feel that the B2B software space, we're not making it as easy as we could be for those end users who they transition, they go to work every single day within their organizations. They have to slave through all these different these different bits of tech. And they get home and they watch Netflix or Spotify, and it's very easy to use. And I just don't understand why we haven't been able to marry the two up. So, but what I also did want to touch on as well is, you're obviously working at Superpath now, and what I'm noticing a lot in the market is individuals looking at starting their own business on the side of what they're doing. So I did want to touch on that. How have you found that process so far? Sort of helping to launch Superpath whilst also working your full-time job?
Listen, I'm not going to paint a rosy picture, pardon the pun, my daughter's name. It's not easy, right? And you mentioned working hard. If anything, you work a bit harder. It's a challenge, but it's exciting. And as I said before, it gives you that fire in your belly. It's put a pep back in my step, and I wouldn't have it any other way, to be honest. But I'll be honest. It's not for everyone. It really is challenging. But on the positive side, what it has done, you know me better than anyone, having worked in the early days. I'm not the most organized person. But what it does teach you to do, managing a side hustle while working a full-time job, it really helps you to get more organized. Secondly, it helps prioritize. Generally, when you have that sort of mindset, you're always thinking of the next idea, or you're thinking of how to solve a solution or get to a certain outcome, whether it's for the customer, the client, yourself, your side hustle, your family. What it does teach you is to prioritize and focus. And more importantly, what a side hustle does do, it gives you a business mindset, right? Yeah. Generally, if you're in a function within a business and you're selling, you're focused on that, you hone your skill sets, and you polish them, you refine them, you get better, you iterate. When you're working on a side hustle, you have to get into the back end and the operations. If anything, it really benefits what you're doing in your full-time work. I know a lot of employers are reluctant to allow people to work on side hustles. You're never going to be able to stop that. But I think personally, and this is my bias, and I know a lot of people will argue, but it really helps the business you're working for having a side hustle. There are parallels where you might not be working in the same vertical or targeting the same ICP. There may not be many synergies, but if you're working in that same space, I tell you what, it can really benefit both your business, but more importantly, the employer, who is technically keeping the lights on, as they say, which I absolutely hate that saying.
Yeah. I think I'm noticing it a little bit now, and I'm sure we do. We operate in similar circles. I am noticing a lot of your high performing salespeople are getting that entrepreneurial itch. And I suppose in order to be a top performing salesperson, in essence, you have to think in a very entrepreneurial way. You have to find different go-to-market strategies, different avenues of attack for speaking with prospects. Are you finding the same sort of thing? Those top performers that are used to having an entrepreneurial flair and spirit, transitioning that into their own business on the side?
Without a doubt. Why, if you're a top performer and you are consistently a top performer and you're absolutely knocking out of the park, I mean, I'm not going to put a percentage on it, but I'd almost say every single person that is in that bracket that you're alluding to is going to go, why wouldn't I do this on my own? And there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to start a side hustle or your own business, be it on your own as a solopreneur, or you want to do it with other founders, you're going to need that, right? These things don't come easy, right? The top performers in an organization, as I kind of said to you just before, it's polishing what you do. And back to your original point, like if you're in that boat and you're not thinking,
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I go and do this for myself? I'm absolutely crushing it. It's probably the first, I guess, stepping stone to going, I can do this, right? Obviously, that should not be the only reason you go and start your own business, because you're able to sell software for a unicorn, right?
Yeah.
That is not going to make you successful in business. But from a thought process, I can see why most, as you said, top performers would want to go and start their own side hustle.
Yeah. And, since you've been doing this yourself now, and obviously, there's the founder of Superpath, and you're leading the go-to-market strategy. How much of your sales experience are you able to transition and bring across into this role of launching a new business?
Yeah, so obviously I look after growth, which encompasses everything. So, and this is another point, back to your previous question. It's not coming in and you're not in a silo. I'm not just selling. I'm looking after partnerships. I'm looking after marketing, our LinkedIn page. I'm looking after all of that sort of stuff. So you wear a lot of different hats, which excites me, right? But it's not everyone's cup of tea. Some people love to stay in their lane and they're really good at it, and they do it really well. You have to wear a lot of different hats in that regard. And what that allows you to do, setting up a go-to-market strategy, as I said, it comes back to the prioritizing things, and it's a challenge. It's like you're selling, you're then onboarding a customer, you're doing end to end. It is roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty. But I think, and I don't need to say this to you, having done this a few times, those are the exciting parts. There is nothing more refreshing than talking about those stories in the old days. I know that we do it. I know that we've got a WhatsApp group with old colleagues, and it's funny. It's all positive. We have a laugh at the tough times. It's funny. You never talk about the good times. It's always the dirty work and the hard work and the challenges that give you a laugh. It's funny. It's ironic that you laugh at the times where you had to grow some hide and put, it was back against the wall sort of stuff.
Absolutely. And it's probably, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's probably a great piece of advice for anyone starting out thinking that they want to launch their own business. There's no better way than throwing or immersing yourself into the early stage foundations of a startup, especially a SaaS tech startup where, you are wearing those multiple different hats and you're having to pivot very quickly, learn and adapt, understand your ICP, understand your go-to-market, all the different buyer journeys, buyer personas, all those different elements that you can piece together and then roll into your own business. Would you agree with that?
And one word that resonates: pivot.
I love a pivot.
Yeah, when you're working a corporate, you barely hear that word, right? You hear analogies like, let's take a helicopter view, let's circle back, at a startup, those acronyms become dirty. And pivot, roadmap, stuff like that. It really, what you learn in a startup in the first year, you'll probably get that in 5 years at a corporate that's doing really well. And that's no offense to corporates. They just do things really well. At a startup, it's learn on the go. You're jumping out the plane without a parachute, to use another cheesy analogy.
Yeah. It's like a 4-year degree crammed into your first 12 months at a SaaS startup. Excellent. Yeah. And then, do you have any advice for those people that, may have been, especially the sales professionals that maybe are looking to launch their own software or their own tech? Do you have any advice for them on how they should go about structuring the new company? Who should they co-founder with? Who should they partner with? What sort of go-to-market should they work on? Do you have any advice for anyone coming up through the ranks?
Probably one key piece of advice. As a salesperson trying to start a tech business, find a tech co-founder. Easier said than done. I'm fortunate that I met Simon. He's worked for some of the best companies that you can think of, from BBC to Red Balloon, Platora, Forage, joining him has been an absolute blessing. I mean, I've worked with other founders, co-founders, and I've seen founders and co-founders that don't have a techie in their ranks. And boy, it's a minefield. It is an absolute minefield. One thing that you'll learn if you're not familiar with startups, two words that come up a lot: tech debt. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really important, isn't it? I mean, it's all well and good to, unless you've got the coffers lined deep and you've got, you can self-fund it. Having someone that can come on board and build the initial product for you will be so much more beneficial. And
yeah, probably.
suppose,
Sorry to interject. Probably something funny. We were talking about top performing salespeople. Another piece of advice I can say: save your commissions, save your bonuses if you don't have a techie, because you're going to need it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Save, work hard and build for the future.
Yeah, 100%.
And what's next for Barry Heath?
Well, what is next? Yeah, again, business as usual. To use the corporate jargon, it's I'm in a fortunate position now where I'm diving into Superpath full time, which is more exciting than anything. It's basically taking the business to the next level. We're excited. We're bringing on employees now. We're in a really good position. I was talking about Simon before. The product is in the best shape. I've seen every LMS under the sun, and obviously I'm biased, but one thing, you talk about sales, you need to believe in what you're selling and who you're partnering with, and this is something I truly believe in. It's basically all hands on deck now, and when I say that, particularly my hands,
You need more
and
hands.
it's diving into it now. It's going back to your original point, it's challenging. I talked about being organized, prioritizing, and getting that business mindset, but juggling a full-time gig and a side hustle is very challenging, right? There are a number of challenges that come with that, and I'm sure you're probably going to ask this, knowing you really well, but one of the main challenges that I found, having a full-time job and working on Superpath, is the blurred lines, right? We all know content is king, right? So you talk LinkedIn.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Like, did you do anything to unblur the lines, or would you have any recommendations for people to seek approval from their employer, or what's your experience like?
I was fortunate, right? So with both previous roles as a consultant, I was open, transparent about Superpath, which was great. My last employer was fantastic. It was written into the contract. I'm often not a black and white person in terms of that sort of thing, but it was great that we got that done. However, they are paying your salary. They are keeping the lights on. However, back to your original point, it's on LinkedIn, you represent them, but you also have your side hustle. So it kind of comes back to the point where I mentioned that being in the same vertical helps, because you're trying to add as much value as you can from a content perspective, but who do you promote on LinkedIn? Because that's, albeit it's in your contract, I can't be out there going, Superpath, adding value, talking to my audience. You talk about ICP, you're representing your company. Now you can go and post something on the weekend. It could dilute, people won't understand what you're doing. It doesn't make sense. That is probably one of the biggest challenges I found. Going to Superpath full time, I've just found, now I can talk to my audience, what I'm passionate about, what drives me. It's I can already see the results. It just speaks for itself.
Yeah, fantastic. Excellent. And then, talking about launching Superpath and what's next, has the organization, or you in particular, have you formulated an idea on what your go-to-market is going to look like, whether that's direct, whether that's, marketing-led, product-led, channel? Where are you sort of sitting with that?
Yeah, very good question. And as an early stage startup, you'll find you try every avenue, but you only have so many resources to do it, right? From our point of view, we're focusing on obviously direct to customer, because we have product market fit, which a lot of people don't have, and that's another thing. Back to one of your original points. If you are a salesperson, for argument's sake, looking to start your own side hustle, you might be selling a particular product, but ensure that you've got product market fit. It's probably one of the most important things. We're fortunate that we know who our ideal customer profile is, who we're selling into. we understand which our core strengths are because the product has been around for a good 3 years. We're focusing, as I said, going direct to customer, which is easy because we do know our ICP. But the big one for me, and you know this, the power of channel is unbelievable. That you kind of put it into two baskets. You're selling one to one or one to many, and if you get a partnership right, the dividends you can reap are astronomical. I have a saying that if you partner, I have a saying that you should partner early and partner often. Now, I know a couple of founders I've spoken to feel like you shouldn't, but I've seen it work. And if you get the partnership right, now don't get me wrong, it's not as easy as that. There's the enablement piece. It's kind of like, you know, planting a lemon seed and then not watering it, hoping that you're going to see an amazing tree with lemons on it. There's so much more that goes on behind the scenes. So it's not just about signing partners. I can jump onto a website, I can find a marketplace, I can sign up to their partner program. That doesn't mean you're going to get deal flow.
Yeah, correct. I like to use the analogy of a commercial fisherman. They don't go out and fish with a single rod. They throw the nets in, but that's only one part. That's only one element of the commercial fishing side. They've then got to have distribution of their produce. And if they don't have the back end, or from how you touched on it just then, the enablement side and effectively managing those partnerships once they've come on board and signed the contract, then there's no point. So I suppose you need to make sure that you have both the acquisition of those channel partners that are most aligned to your organization and will provide the most benefit 50-50 or win-win for everyone. But then also having those processes in place to effectively enable and manage those relationships moving forward.
Absolutely. Partnerships is easy. I love partnerships, right? It's genuine conversations. It's value creation. But the most important thing to understand when you're working in the partnership space is understanding who's first cab off the rank.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, you know, you mentioned 50-50. Very rarely do you see a partnership that is 50-50. That is ideal state, right? That's nirvana. But as the sooner you realize that who is the underpinning infrastructure or technology, who is that first cab off the rank, and then playing into that, I think that is going to make your business, the tug and war, get that out of the way early. You know, and it's not just you working with the other partner managers. It's then, as you said, getting in the distribution, working with the sales teams, working with the customer success. Because I talked about belief and really being passionate about what you do. Now, you're never going to make them believe or as passionate as you about your own product. But it's educating them and creating that value add. And again, I can't iterate enough around understanding your lane in that partnership space and where you sit, because that's going to set it up for success moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. And I did want to loop back around. You know, you've mentioned a few times understanding your go-to-market, understanding your product market fit, understanding your ICP, your ideal customer profile. I think that is a really important part for someone, or an element for someone considering launching their own business on the side. You know, if you've been in L&D HR tech for a long time, you know it, you love it, you have a really strong passion that you can see comes through in the way you explain it. That obviously lends itself really well to launching a side business where you're in that frame, where you're in that business day to day because you understand it. Would you agree on that?
Completely. You know, obviously I'm passionate about learning, all that research. You know, I spend way too much time on my phone, and it's not Facebook or Fox Sports. It's basically, you know, what are the new tools coming out now? And with you know, the buzzword at the moment, AI, things are so much easier to do, right? It's, you know, going on there. Another must have from a sales growth or partnerships perspective is LinkedIn Sales Nav. The ability to filter down on your ICP, understand that it's going to set you apart. It's just something that you need to have in terms of understanding, you know, for someone in that sales space. Google's not good enough because, you know, again, let's use learning platforms for argument's sake. Both you and I know there's over, I think, 900 platforms globally. The majority of them are not fantastic, right? I'm not going to sit here.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and slander the competition. Everyone's trying to build something meaningful and that's going to make an impact. And kudos to them. Hats off to anyone that giving it a crack. But at the end of the day, you need to understand so many things when you're going to start a side hustle. Competition. I can go back to my marketing degree. Do a SWOT analysis. There's AI tools out there that now can do a business plan for you in under 2 minutes that will tell you all of that information. Happy to share that with the audience if they'd like. There's the research component and learning about that is just so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, fantastic. Look, I think, well, I'm conscious of your time. I know you're a very busy man and you do have to shoot off. So we'll wrap it up there. But I did just want to thank you very much for jumping on the show. I'm obviously a huge fan, massive supporter of yours and obviously the Superpath product and what you guys are looking to achieve, is game changing. And I think it could be really exciting for the market to receive that, and I'm looking forward to cheering as loud as I can from the sidelines. But I just wanted to say a massive thank you for jumping on the show and sharing, I suppose, your story on how to sort of launch a side hustle with the audience.
No, thank you for having me, mate. It's always great speaking to you, and love what you're doing at Crux, mate. It's good to see the paths we've taken, and as you know, support a side hustle. In fact, it's something that's super part when we employ people. We encourage them to have a side hustle. We understand the benefits it brings to us as a business. Yep. It's not something you should shy or hide away from. If anything, I personally see it as a huge positive.
Yeah, I suppose, and having the awareness to I suppose shape that conversation. If you are speaking to an employer at the moment or a future employer, don't be afraid to say that, this just demonstrates your entrepreneurial spirit and your willingness to give everything a go, which will impact the organization that you work for as well, because, you'll bring different ideas to the table. So I suppose it's understanding how to frame that information effectively and communicate that across to the right people.
Yeah. And just before I go, it's a bit of an oxymoron, but as I've said, there's two schools of thoughts when doing a side hustle. You often hear the American version, which is basically come up with an idea and take action. We often say we think and talk about it too much and never take action. And then in Australia, we're not as bullish in that regard, and it's more that learning and research. So there's that two schools of thought. So if you're going to do it the way that suits you. But take it with a pinch of salt.
Oh, great advice. That's really great advice, Barry. It's been wonderful as always. I wish you all the best, and we'll definitely have to catch up again very, very soon.
Perfect, mate. I'll be up your way next week, so let's catch up.
All right, we'll dust off the clubs and we'll go for a swing.
Yeah, mate. Great to chat. Thanks for having me.
Chat to you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Don't forget to follow Crux PRM on LinkedIn or cruxhq.com to register as a guest.